Story that's called The Griffin, but you do have to wait a little while before we meet the Griffin, because the first person that we meet is a king. As to what the king's name is, the story does not say. But the king had a daughter who was very ill. And the king was worried that his daughter may in fact never recover. So he went to a witch, he went to a wise woman and asked her what he could do. And the wise woman said, "Your daughter needs apples. Your daughter needs beautiful golden apples to restore her to health and vitality." And word of this spread, as of course news always does, and reached the ears of a peasant. And the peasant had in his back garden an apple tree which produced the most beautiful golden apples. So the oldest son picked some apples, put them in a basket, covered them with a cloth, and began to walk to the castle. And on the way, the oldest son met a little man, a little grey-haired man wearing grey patched clothes, and perhaps he walked with a stick. And the little grey man said to the oldest son, "What is it you have in your basket?" And the oldest son said, "I have frog's legs." So the grey man said, "So it is, and so must it be." So the oldest son walked to the castle, and when he told the guard at the gate that he had golden apples to restore the princess to health, they let him in. But when the cloth was taken off the basket, and they saw that inside were indeed frog's legs that were hopping around in the basket, they threw the young man out and beat him with a broomstick handle. The next day, the second son decided to try his luck, so he picked some apples from the tree, put them in the basket, put the cloth over the basket, and off he went. And on the way, on the road to the castle, he met a little man with grey hair and grey clothes. And the old man said to the young man, "What do you have in your basket?" And the young man said, "I have hog's bristles." "So it is, and so must it be." So the second son went to the castle, and when he told them that he had apples in his basket, they let him in. But when they saw that what he really had in his basket was hog's bristles, as indeed the little old man had said, they threw him out and they beat him with a broomstick handle. Now that left the third and youngest son, and his name was Hans. And Hans, his father and his older brothers thought that Hans would always find life difficult, and it would always be very difficult for Hans to find his way in the world. Nevertheless, Hans picked the apples and put them in the basket and covered them with a cloth, and off he went. And on the road he met a little old man with grey hair and grey clothes. He said, "Young man, what do you have in the basket?" And Hans said, "I have some beautiful golden apples from my father's garden, and I am hopeful that they will restore the princess to health." So it is, so must it be. So it took Hans some time to convince the girls on the gate that he really did have golden apples in his basket, but he went in. And when the princess ate, she ate the first apple, she ate the second apple, she ate the third apple. She felt so much better, and colour returned to her cheeks, and she threw off her bedclothes, jumped out of bed, and ran down the stairs to her father. He was overjoyed to see his daughter so well. And of course, really, by all the rules of storytelling at this point, Hans should really marry the princess and live happily ever after. But the king the king really didn't want his daughter to marry a commoner. So he set Hans a series of tasks. And the first task that he set Hans to win his daughter's hand in marriage was to build a boat. Build a boat which will sail as fast over land as it will over the sea. So when Hans went home and spoke to his father and spoke to his brothers, it was his oldest brother who went to the forest and began to chop down a tree to make the wood to build the boat. And the little old man appeared with his grey clothes and his grey hair, and he said to the oldest son, "What are you making?" And he looked at the little old man and said, "I am making wooden plates." So it is, and so must it be. So, when the eldest son went back to the forest the next day and found the tree that he had cut down ready to build the boat, he found a stack of wooden plates. Useful as they weren't going to win anyone the princess's hand in marriage. Now the same thing happened to the second son, but of course when it was Hans' turn to go out to the forest and chop down a tree, ready to build a boat which would sail as fast over land as it would over water, the little old man with the grey hair and the grey clothes appeared, and Hans said, "I am building a boat. It needs to travel as fast over land as it will over water." And the little old man said, "So it is, and so must it be." So when Hans had completed the boat and he took it to the castle, the king said, "I have 100 hares in the field, all destined to be cooked as jugged hare. 100 hares. I need you to tend them. If even one hare escapes, that will be the end of your challenges." So Hans spent the day tending and minding 100 hares. And when the little old man appeared to him this time, he gave Hans a whistle and said, "If any of the hares try to escape, blow the whistle and the hare will come back to you." So when a maid from the castle came and asked Hans for a hare, for she wished to make jugged hare for the princess, Hans thought he knew where this would lead, and he refused. But he said, "If the princess herself comes, I will give her a hare." So sometime later, the princess herself came out to the field and spoke to Hans and asked for a hare, and he caught a hare, and the princess placed it in the pocket in her apron. And as she walked away, Hans blew on the whistle, and the hare jumped out of her apron pocket and ran straight back to Hans. So the next day, Hans delivered all 100 hares to the castle. The king said, "I have one more task for you." And of course, this was the most difficult task of all. And this, my friends, is where we meet the Griffin. You must find the Griffin and bring me back a tail feather. Because, of course, griffins, as we all know, but I think you may have forgotten, because you don't see many of them anymore. Griffins have very long tail feathers. They have the tail of an eagle. They have the wings of an eagle. They have the head of an eagle, but the body of a lion. If ever you see one, do confirm this for me. So Hans, nothing daunted, set out to begin his journey to find the Griffin and find a griffin's tail feather. And Hans stayed one night in a castle where he had begged lodging. And when he told his story to the people there, they said, "The Griffin knows many things. Ask the Griffin why it is that the Baron who lives in this castle, why his daughter is so ill." And Hans said, "I will ask the Griffin, and if I get an answer, I will tell it to you on my way back." So Hans carried on his journey, thinking to himself, when I get to the Griffin, I must ask the Griffin why the Baron's daughter is so ill. At the second castle, the people there said, when you get to the Griffin, ask him, where is the key to the treasure chest? We have a great big treasure chest, full of treasure, full of gold, and we don't know where the key is. Hans said, I will ask the Griffin, and on my way home, I will tell you his answer. So Hans carried on with his journey, and after some time he came to a lake. And instead of having a ferry, a little boat, to row people across the lake, there was a tall man whose job it was to carry people across the lake on his shoulders. And he said to Hans, when you find the Griffin, can you ask him, what do I need to do to stop carrying people across the lake? The water is cold, my shoulders ache, and I am so weary. Hans said, I will ask the Griffin, and I will tell you on the way back, because I'm sure to come back this way. So Hans crossed the lake on the tall man's shoulders, and he went and found the Griffin. The Griffin wasn't there, but the Griffin's wife was there. And Hans explained what he was there for, and about saving the princess's life and trying to win her hand in marriage, and about the tall man who carried people across the lake, and about the missing key to the treasure chest, and about the Baron's daughter who was so ill. And the Griffin's wife said, hide under the bed. He'll be home soon. So, the Griffin's wife told him that someone had visited earlier in the day and had asked them the questions. Why is it that the Baron's daughter is so ill? And the Griffin said, down in the cellar is a toad, and the toad has made a nest out of her hair. All they have to do is go down to the cellar, find her hair, replace it on her head, and she will be restored to health. And then she asked about the key to the treasure chest. And the Griffin just sighed, said, it's in the wood store, it's under the log behind the door. And the Griffin's wife asked him about the tall man who endlessly carried people back and forth across the lake. And the Griffin sighed and said all he has to do is the next person he carries across the lake, just drop them in the middle of the lake. And then he can wade his way through the lake, go and dry himself off, and he need never work any more. So Hans, laying under the bed, heard all this. And when the Griffin went to sleep, he managed to tug the feather from the Griffin's tail. And the Griffin woke up, and his wife said, just go back to sleep, my love. And in the morning, after the Griffin had left, because Griffins have to go to work as well, although I'm not quite sure what they do, the wife related the answers to all three questions, just in case Hans hadn't heard properly. So when Hans went back along the road, he said to the man and carried people over the lake, he waited till he got to the other side, because Hans was quite clever, really. When Hans had got to the other side of the lake and his feet were indeed on dry land once more, he said to the man, "The next person you carry over the lake, just drop him in the middle." And when Hans got to the castle, he went to the wood store and looked behind the door, and there, under a log, was the key to the treasure chest. And when he gave it to the people in the castle, they were so thrilled. He gave Hans some of the gold that was inside the treasure chest. And when he got to the Baron's castle, and he said, "I know how to make your daughter well again," and he carried the daughter down the cellar steps, and there he found the toad, and he found the daughter's hair. And as soon as her hair was restored to her, she regained her health. And the Baron was so grateful. He gave Hans silver, and he gave Hans goats. So by the time Hans got back to the king's castle, he had a bag with gold and with silver, and he was herding some goats. And the king was very impressed by this. And the king said, "Where did you find the gold? Where did you find the silver? And where did you find these goats?" And Hans said, "The Griffin gave them to me, because the Griffin has lots of gold and lots of silver and lots of goats." And so the king thought he would rather like to visit the Griffin. He would rather like to have some gold and some silver. I'm not quite sure what he needed the goats for, but I suppose kings need milk and cheese and butter and goat skins as much as anyone else does. So the king set off on his journey. And when he came to the lake and the tall man carried him over the lake, the tall man threw him in the water. And the king drowned. So Hans married the princess. And of course, this is your line. Okay, they lived happily ever after. So I think the Griffin just carried on living as he always had done. But what the story doesn't tell was what happened to the little grey man. But I like to think that perhaps, if ever he appeared again, Hans would have given him some of his gold or some of his silver, or maybe one of the goats. Do you think he would? If anybody can find the Brothers Grimm's phone number, do let me know so I can ring them up and ask them. Meantime, we will all have to carry on wondering. So, I hope to see you soon, and if you see any griffins, do let me know where you see them. Stay safe. Take care.